Now, this comes from a place of love. I love Epic the musical, love it, and I've been following its progress for some time now. But a few weeks ago, I was watching a video post where Jorge Rivera Herranz was talking about how it's not a direct retelling, and fans really shouldn't base their knowledge of the Odyssey on Epic, especially if they're at school, because they will fail their tests. So I made an infographic. I'm going to be teaching the Odyssey again in September, something like the 16th time, and I'd really love to introduce my students to Epic because I think they'll really love it, but I also want them to get 9s in their tests. And I used to teach English literature, and I remember what happened when the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet came out. So I'm making an infographic series going through each of the sagas and picking out the differences between the saga and the Odyssey. So first up, it's the Troy Saga. So the Troy Saga covers a bit of the Odyssey that's not actually in the Odyssey, but is contextually important, the Trojan War. Now, this was probably part of the lost epic cycle. Then they go on to, skipping over a huge chunk, Book 9, where they leave Troy. There should also be the sack of the Cocones and the Lotus Eaters and Goat Island and Polyphemus the Cyclops in this section, but not all of that is present. So going through each of the songs, the first song is The Horse and the Infant, and this is essentially like Book 0, because this isn't in the Odyssey itself. This is where Odysseus apparently leads the final attack on Troy. So this is not in the Odyssey, as I said. You could maybe read Aeneid Book 2. You'll get a very Trojan point of view account there, and a very we hate all Greeks version, because it's a Latin fanfic later. Now, the heroes mentioned are all correct, and Neo is Neoptolemus. This is the son of Achilles. Achilles is dead by this point, and they've received notice that they need to have the son of Achilles in the war in order to win it. Now, you might not know that Neoptolemus's nickname is Pyrrhus, which means fiery, which kind of relates to his temper, but also, it suggests that he has red hair, and temper and red hair go together in an awful lot of metaphorical imagery. I should know I have red hair. I have been bullied about it since a child and been accused of having a temper, even though that is definitely not the case. So, no gods speak to Odysseus in this section, we think, but Zeus here speaking to Odysseus is a very clever conceit to give Odysseus a reason to kill baby Astyanax, the son of Hector, which he is meant to have done for the same reasons given, because he is the clever one after all. He's the one who would think of this. Or in other versions, Neoptolemus does it, because Neoptolemus is crazy, awfully, brutally violent. But it's still on Odysseus's advice. Now, putting it in like this makes us feel pathos for his tough decisions. Oh no, we like him, but he's got to kill a baby. Oh well, it's not his fault, Zeus told him to. Okay. Moving on to Just a Man. This is where that exact sentiment gets drawn out. Again, we're in Book 0, really, because this is an imagined moment between Odysseus and Astyanax, the infant he's going to have to kill, by punting him off the battlements of Troy. This doesn't happen in the Odyssey. Again, this is from the Iliad, really, but it's not in the Iliad. This is from the lost books of the epic cycle. It doesn't happen, but it's kind of reasonable that he'd have these thoughts, and it's really important for his characterization. We are told in the very first lines of the Odyssey that Odysseus is polytropos, which means many turning, or much travelled, kind of experienced. And the idea that he has many minds is another version of this. He turns his mind this way and that before making decisions all the way through the Odyssey. So this is really in keeping with the character of Odysseus. And anyone's going to probably have a really big heart-to-heart before punting a baby anyway. We find out later whether or not he actually does it. It's not entirely clear from the song. Moving on to Full Speed Ahead, Book 9. This is where everyone leaves Troy, and this song also introduces two characters, Eurylochus and Polites. Now, these are, in the Odyssey, two of the only named characters among Odysseus' crew. They're certainly the only ones who really get any lines, as it were. Eurylochus is indeed the suspicious and critical one. There is a point at which Odysseus ponders in his great heart whether to Caturillicus' head off because he is so annoyed with him. And Polites is described as Odysseus' favourite kinsman, one who speaks sense, i.e. he says what Odysseus is thinking. So that is pretty correct, and I kind of look forward to seeing how they are used later on in the epic. There are 600 men, that is correct, with Odysseus. He has 12 ships with 50 men on them, which I think is a detail we get given in the Iliad Book 2, the list of ships, the catalogue of ships, sorry. I have an entire listing called Odyssey Death Maths, which is in a post. At some point I'll actually turn that into a comic because it's fun. Now, the next song is Open Arms. This is interesting. So this is book 9, kind of. Polites and Odysseus go to the Lotus Eaters, which is not actually what happens next in the Odyssey. This is the second episode after leaving Troy. The sack of the Cocones is the first episode. Now, they are Trojan allies, thus sacking them is okay. It is fair game because the Trojans are defeated and they need supplies to be able to get home. But this missing episode is important to the plot of the Odyssey for 2 reasons. 1, it sets up the crew as disobedient from the start, because once they have sacked the Cocones, Odysseus says, right guys, we have to leave. And all his men say, nah, man, I want to lie here and eat some food. It's the first time we've actually been able to relax and everything. And Odysseus doesn't make them get up and go. He lets them. This is the first tiny mutiny. Well, it's not actually very tiny. It's pretty damn big. And the next morning, pretty much exactly as expected, probably, they are attacked by the reinforcements the Cocones, the remainder of which have sent for. And they barely get away. They lose 6 men from each ship, and it's not Odysseus' fault. Odysseus is very keen to point out because it is his narrative. He's the one telling the story. The other thing that is really important here is this is where Odysseus gets the super strength wine from Maron, son of Euanthes, priest of Apollo, who lives among the Cocones, and they rightfully spare him. If you are familiar with the Iliad, you know you do not mess with the priests of Apollo. So Maron gives Odysseus this amazing wine from his stores that he would never let anyone but his family drink, right? Because it's so strong. This is what Odysseus is, spoiler, going to use to defeat Polyphemus the Cyclops. And now Epic's Odysseus doesn't have this. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens next. Then, going on to the actual Lotus Eaters, I kind of love how they are here. They're these cute little hello voices, kind of like the tiny aliens in the tiny squishy aliens in Toy Story. Ooh, their claw, that kind of thing. So this isn't entirely correct because they're meant to be regular people who eat fruit that stops them wanting to do anything. We know this because all the threats in Book 9 are anthropomorphic, right? They're all human-shaped. The Cocones are literally humans. The Lotus Eaters are one step further away from being human because they lack this thing that apparently makes people human, according to Odysseus, right? Nostos. This is what they remove from his men, the willingness to go home, the willingness to be active, to do anything. They are inactive. They are nothing. They are teenagers on a bank holiday. And when his men that he sends, not Polites, in fact, when his men that he sends, 3 men and a scout, don't come back, he goes and gets them back like an angry dad, okay? He smacks the fruit from their hands, he drags them back to the ship, and this is a major theme, the loss of Nostos, the need for homecoming, right? Now, these little creatures, when Polites, who's all like, oh, we should be happy and just ask for things, and it is like, no, Polites, we need to be really suspicious, and I'm right, because we nearly died from eating lotus. They say, oh, you can get food in a cave, and this is setting up for the Cyclops saga. This doesn't happen. The Lotus Eaters give them no information at all. It's actually incredibly short in the Odyssey. So Polites being a main character here and being the one who goes with Odysseus, which doesn't happen in the Odyssey, is actually a really Homeric idea. In the Iliad especially, Homer tells us fun facts about warriors and their home lives and how good they are and their family and makes us like them and then kills them, right? That might be a spoiler. Don't get too attached to Polites if you haven't listened yet. Finally, Warrior of the Mind. Now, this is from book... No, it's not really in the Odyssey, right? Until later, all right? Because Athene doesn't appear to Odysseus at this point. She does appear to him as a young girl when he reaches the land of the fire. She's in book 7 prior to this. And then when he actually gets home, spoiler, he gets home in book 13, she sits and has a chat with him in her true form under an olive tree on the beach. It's kind of wild. But that's not what's happening here. Here is, again, it's exposition. It's telling us the story. And in the Odyssey itself, Athene has appeared earlier than book 7. She appears in books 1 to 3 to Telemachus, the son of Odysseus. She's disguised as first a guy called Mentes and then Mentor, which, fun fact, is actually where we get the word mentor, someone who looks after you, teaches you to do stuff. She inspires Telemachus to go on a trip to visit all of Odysseus' old friends and get news of him. Odysseus is not in books 1 to 4. It's just Telemachus finding out about his old man. And then we meet Odysseus in book 5. So Athene in the song tells Odysseus she set up an undefeatable boar as a challenge, and he's the one who beat it as a boy. This refers to Odysseus' own origin story when he kills this amazing boar, but it leaves him with this recognizable scar on his thigh. We're told about this in book 19, and this is what allows him to be recognized by his family when he's in disguise, an old man, later when he gets home to Ithaca. So this is real. Odysseus pretends to recognize Athene. They have a bit of a fun chat. It's kind of bantery. And while it's not in Odysseus, it works. As characters in Homer always say to mysterious strangers or new friends, hey, you look like a god. Why do they do this? Because it's polite, right? It's flattering. And sometimes it's actually true. It's something to do with, oh, your neck is glowing. You must be a god. So this chat is also really fun, and it sets us up to understand their relationship, just like in the Odyssey. Athene is the patron of Odysseus because of his cleverness. She's the external representation of his talent of cleverness. But she is more powerful and brutal when it comes to carrying out revenge for killing the people who break Xenia. Xenia is another major theme. It means hospitality, people who come as guests to your home, the way they act, and you as a host, the way you act towards them. Very important theme. I've done a separate comic on that if you want to read about it. So this seems to be exactly how we are meant to see Athene. She is brutal, she is powerful, and Odysseus is not exactly like her. But there are hints even at this point that he will become more like the hero she has marked him out to be as EPIC continues. So, as an overview, and this is my personal opinion really, again, I've taught it for a really long time and I've written about it a lot, skipping some details from the original text, this tells us this is an AU, right? This is not the Odyssey. And it's an AU where Odysseus is a nicer person, but it does remove some of his complicated nature that makes him so beloved as a character. If you enjoyed that, subscribe. I'm going to be adding to these. I'm going to be using them in class. And have a look at my other videos to get some context on the Odyssey too.